All right, let's jump right in. We're going to go on a little journey today. A journey from that heart-pounding, gut-wrenching anxiety of speculative trading, all the way to the quiet confidence you get from long-term ownership. And we're going to do it by looking at Warren Buffett's 60-year masterclass. But first, I want you to ask yourself this, and be honest. Have you ever felt that cold, sick feeling deep in your stomach when an investment just goes completely, horribly wrong?
You know, for the author of our source material, that moment was incredibly specific. It wasn't just some bad day in the market. It was a real crisis. Watching 3 months of his rent just vanish, all because of a hot tip from a subreddit. This wasn't investing. This was something else.
And that brings us to our first idea here, the 2 a.m. casino. This is that world of high-anxiety, speculative day trading. And you have to understand, it's a world that has been very carefully built to make you feel like a player when you're really just the next person in line to lose. Think about it. These modern trading apps, they're basically designed to get you hooked. They set this incredibly clever trap. The little green candles give you a hit of dopamine, right? The red ones trigger adrenaline. You're constantly reacting to noise, tweets, headlines, rumors, and in all of that chaos, you totally forget to ask the most important question. Do I actually understand this business? You're not owning a piece of a company. You're just gambling on a ticker symbol. So how do you escape the casino? Well, you have to understand the single most powerful and honestly the most overlooked concept that powers Warren Buffett's entire empire. Let's take a look at his secret engine.
And that engine has a name. It's called float. Now, Buffett's own definition sounds so simple. Float is money we hold but don't own. But trust me, that one simple sentence is the bedrock of a trillion-dollar company.
So how does this actually work? Well, it's pretty genius, actually. Berkshire Hathaway's core business is insurance, so their customers pay their premiums today, right up front. But the claims, those might not get paid out for months, sometimes even years. And in that gap, Berkshire gets to hold on to and invest all that money. It's basically like getting a giant loan, and get this, a lot of the time, they're actually getting paid to hold it.
And the scale of this is, it's just staggering. By 2022, Berkshire's insurance float had ballooned to $164 billion. That is a massive pile of capital that costs them almost nothing, which they can then use to go out and buy the greatest businesses in the world.
But having all that money is only half the story. You have to know what to do with it. And this brings us to probably the biggest philosophical shift in Buffett's entire career, the move from buying what he called cigar butts to buying castles. And we have his partner, Charlie Munger, to thank for that. The change was, well, it was everything. See, Buffett started out as a student of Benjamin Graham, which meant buying any beaten-down company as long as it was dirt cheap. These were the cigar butts. You find one on the ground, it's good for one last free puff, and then you toss it. But Munger came along and just flipped that whole idea on its head. He said the goal isn't to buy a fair company at a wonderful price. The goal is to buy a wonderful company at a fair price. And this one single idea from Charlie Munger completely changed the game for value investing. It's a total paradigm shift. It means stop digging through the junkyard for bargains and start looking for quality, for businesses that have these durable protective advantages. And these protective advantages, that's what Buffett calls an economic moat. He mainly looks for 4 kinds. You've got brand power, like Coca-Cola has. You have switching costs, like Apple's ecosystem that makes it so hard to leave. There are network effects, where a company like Visa gets more valuable the more people use it. And finally, cost advantage, where a company like Geico can just operate way cheaper than its rivals. These are the walls of a great business castle. Okay, so the philosophy sounds great in theory, but what does it actually look like in the real world? How does this stuff actually build unbelievable wealth? Let's get into the math of patience. Okay, just look at the legendary Coca-Cola investment. Back in 1988, Buffett put about $1.3 billion into Coke. Now, at the time, Wall Street was yawning, saying it was a boring old company. So let's fast forward to today. That single investment now pays Berkshire about $816 million a year. Not in total value, just in cash dividends. Just think about that for a second. That's an annual yield of over 60% on his original investment. His entire initial purchase price comes back to him in cash every 18 months or so, and he still owns every single share. That is the power of buying a wonderful business, and then, well, just doing nothing. And don't think for a second this patient genius faded with age. At 90 years old, Buffett pulled off this incredibly beautiful, elegant trade in Japan. He borrowed a ton of money in Japanese yen at a ridiculously low interest rate, like 0.5%. Then, he turned around and used that same yen to buy big stakes in Japanese companies that were paying out dividends of 5 to 8%. And since he borrowed and invested in the same currency, he had zero currency risk. It's basically a money machine with almost no risk, guaranteed to work from day one.
So you're probably not going to be playing the Japanese markets anytime soon, but that's okay, because you have your own unfair advantage. Let's talk about the tools and the mental models that you can actually use, starting with the biggest edge you have over all the professionals.
And that advantage is simply time. See, a hedge fund manager has to report their performance every single quarter. If they have a bad 6 months, their investors get nervous and pull their money. They are forced to think short term. But you're not. You can buy a great business and just sit on it for a decade without having to answer to anybody. This time arbitrage is your absolute superpower.
The other big piece of the puzzle is just being honest with yourself. Buffett absolutely loves this quote from the founder of IBM. It's really the core of his whole circle of competence idea. The point is, you don't have to be an expert on everything. You just have to know with total clarity the exact edge of what you do understand, and then never, ever step outside of it.
And when you're looking at a business inside that circle, you gotta use Buffett's favorite tool, owner earnings. Forget about the reported profits for a second. This formula is designed to show you how much real cash a business is generating for its owners. And the most important part, the secret sauce, really, is subtracting maintenance CapEx. That's the money a company has to spend on boring stuff, like fixing old factories, just to stay in business. A company that doesn't need to spend a lot just to tread water, like See's Candies, is a true cash-generating machine.
All right, let's bring it all home. How do we take all these lessons and forge them into a personal framework? One that can actually transform investing from a source of that 2 a.m. anxiety into a source of quiet, compounding confidence.
Here's a really practical 5-step plan. 1. Actually write down what you truly understand. 2. For any investment, ask yourself, would I be happy to own this for 10 years if the stock market shut down tomorrow? 3. Do the math on owner earnings. 4. Keep a physical, too-hard list of all the things you don't understand. This is your defense against FOMO. And 5. Automate the boring 90%. Put the bulk of your money into a simple, low-cost index fund. This frees up all your mental energy to focus on finding those 1 or 2 truly wonderful companies that you understand deeply.
And all of this leads to the final and most critical mindset shift. The stock market is not a casino game that you're trying to win. It is a tool. It's a mechanism that lets you become a part owner in the world's most incredible businesses. And when you really see it that way, the anxiety just melts away, and the purpose becomes crystal clear.
So, I'll leave you with this question to really think about. What's something you've looked at recently? Maybe you felt that little pull of FOMO, but you had the discipline to step back and say, you know what? I just don't understand this well enough to own it. Because that too hard pile, it isn't a sign of weakness. It's the ultimate sign of an investor's strength.